Ladies and gentlemen, this is WCBA.TV. What the mind can conceive, the heart believe, you out there can achieve. This is Colonel Poole speaking from East Ellijay, Georgia, here at Poole's Barbecue, home of one of the world's in the top 10 best barbecues. Anyhow, I have a special guest today, Dr. David Hewitt and his lovely wife, Ann. Hello, Ann.
Hey.
Hi there, Colonel Poole. Dave Hewitt here.
I am glad to have you as on my program tonight because we have so many things in common. How did we meet?
Well, I came here 6 years ago to Walnut Mountain. We bought a house here, Ann and I did. And we kept seeing these colorful signs here along the way, Poole's Barbecue. We stopped in and had a sandwich one day with our granddaughter, and she went back with us to Albany. That's her permanent home. So I came to see you 2 years ago, and this is 2010. 2 years ago, and we talked on the outside about college and that kind of thing, and the word Stetson came up. And we discovered we had both been to Stetson at the same time, roughly.
Can you believe that, folks? Stetson University down in DeLand, Florida, right close to my home of New Smyrna Beach. Well, we did not know each other there, but later on, you asked me where I went after that.
And yes, and you mentioned going to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, and I said, strange to say, so did I.
You have an MRE degree.
And a BD.
And a BD, and I have both degrees, and changed to MDiv, and you have your PhD
from Florida State.
FSU.
Right.
Now, well, why did you go from being at the seminary, having 2 degrees from there? It looks like you'd have been a preacher.
Well, and I was. I was at First Baptist Church in Panama City, Florida for a while, but I had this feeling of wanting to teach. And as one man told me later, I think you're a natural teacher. So I had a knack for teaching. I wanted to be in a classroom with students, interacting. And so I went back to Florida State and got the PhD. And 29 years later, I retired from the University System of Georgia, a college called Darton College in Albany, where I had taught hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of students and loved it all.
Now, you have a home here in the area on Walnut Mountain, I believe.
Correct.
So both Albany,
yes,
and Walnut Mountain.
That is correct. We've been living part-time on Walnut Mountain for 6 years.
And loving it.
And like it there, yes.
Now, the voice you just heard speak up is Ann. Ann, come here and tell these folks what we have in common.
Well, we were both at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary at the same time. You left that out. You didn't say I was there.
But that's right. I'm sorry. I apologize, folks.
I was at Southern Seminary. That's where I met Dave. And Colonel Poole and I discovered about 2 months ago that we were in a play that went to Miami Beach, Florida in 1960. And the play was given before 10,000 people, and Billy Graham was in the audience, front row. And it was just it was serendipity learning that we had been in that same play that went to Miami Beach, Florida. Well, I wanted to tell you that Billy Graham, do you remember? Billy Graham was in the first row, and he was to speak after the play. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. And I do not recall him saying what he said, but what did he say after that, our play?
He was supposed to speak after the play, and he stood up and he said, I cannot say anything that would add to the message of this play. And he sat down.
Now, 1960 was 40, 10, plus 10 is 50 years ago. Now, folks, Ann has brought to me tonight a picture of the cast, and I can't tell which one's me. I was Simon Peter, and my wife, Edna, was the nurse, and you were...
I was a ghost.
Oh, well, yeah, folks. Were you a Holy Ghost?
I was a poor lost soul, and that's the reason I came back to haunt the preacher in the play.
That's right.
The play was written by one of the seminary students. His name was Malcolm Leach. Malcolm, if you're out there somewhere, we're giving you credit for that.
And who was our director?
Our director was a famous
Charles McGlaughlin.
thespian named Dr. Charles A. McGlaughlin.
And he was from New Smyrna Beach.
He was, and that's where yes, that was your home.
And I showed up, and nobody knew his middle name except me. And I told it one day, Addis, Charles Addis McGlaughlin. Oh, Addis, it's amazing. Now, in that picture is a picture of Ed. We can't show it on the show here, but hope the folks can just use your imagination a little bit. There's Edna standing as a nurse. Now, something else we have in common, thank you, Em, something else we have in common, Dave, is we are both from Florida.
Yes, I'm from the Panhandle region. Actually, my county was Jackson County, Mariana. Spent many years in Panama City, but I'm from the Panhandle, and I think you're on the Atlantic side, weren't you?
Yeah, New Smyrna Beach. That's down there below Daytona Beach, or in the central region of the state, but on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. My grandmother lived at Baker, Florida. You know? Yeah. Okay, I've never lived there, but it's a small place, isn't it? Yeah, it's a hole in the road. It was then. They were on a 40-acre farm out there. My mother, Sally Jeanette Cain Poole, their name was Cain, C-A-I-N, and she married my father down in New Smyrna Beach.
Yeah.
Well, it's so good. This is reliving. We've talked some before this program about other things which we haven't got time to deal with here. I went to Asbury Seminary after Stetson, immediately after Stetson.
Yes.
I was out 5 years, then went back to Louisville to the same seminary as you went to.
Right.
Then I went out and was a pastor and various things. Then I came back in 70, I'm not sure when it was.
In the 70s. I don't remember the year that you told me, but I forget now.
I think I graduated with my D-Min back in 74.
Okay.
I think of that. And so I loved that, and I think it's all right to say some of those fundamentals will not hear this. What's happened to Southern Seminary?
Southern Seminary is a different school than when you and I were there. Entirely different.
I think, I have the image, it's more like a Bible school.
Correct. I would agree with that.
And a group pulled out of there and formed a School of Theology, McAfee School of Theology, at Mercer University.
In Atlanta.
And that meets in Atlanta.
Right.
And I've been trying to get to speak there for a good while, or at least I could play the piano.
Oh, could you? Lead the singing.
Well, if they'd sing.
Okay.
You said you had been here for 6 years, and you live out in Jimmy...
On Walnut Mountain.
That's Jimmy Carter country.
His house is near us. We don't visit him, but he doesn't come much, we hear. But, his is on this street, and ours is over in another way, but it's on Walnut Mountain, yeah.
What do you see as the direction of our country, and how do you feel about it, David?
Well, and I don't know, maybe I haven't lived long enough, though I'm in my 70s, but I think since the era of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal.
Yeah, FDR.
I think since that era, we have been slowly moving towards socialism, except we don't call it by that name. Big government programs for this, that, and the other group, massive spending, massive deficit spending, taxing our future generation of children. Who knows who will be paying off the national debt in the next 20 years?
Well, David, I define socialism as income here up high and lower living down here. Live beneath your income and not on top of your income.
Yes, I would. That's a good observation. I think so too. I don't know. I don't think the country will ever, and maybe it's not wise to say forever, but I don't think the country will ever go back to a pre-FDR era.
Well, I don't know what to say about that. Everybody loved FDR, but my dad didn't. Not where I came from. We were always, we were Democrats because there were no Republicans down there.
Yeah, deep south.
But we were conservative Democrats.
And there was, I think my father, who died when I was young, but but that would describe my father. He was a conservative Democrat without saying it. But that's really what he was.
I'll bet you recall some of those names down there in Florida when we were growing up. Spencer Holland?
Knew him. He was governor and later senator.
Yes, and that's all we knew. We were Democrats, and I couldn't even spell the word Republican.
Yeah. And by the way, Spencer Holland spoke to Stetson one day, and I was present to hear him speak.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I don't believe I ever heard him, but I recall him very well.
Did you know Doyle Carlton?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
He was down. I know where he was from. I've got some friends, mutual friends, who knew him quite well. I've met his son. I did not meet Doyle, but I met his son. Mm-hmm. They have a big farm down there,
yeah.
A big cattle farm and so on, and I've heard about him. Now, your dissertation, I'm going to have Ann come back here. Ann's going to brag a little bit about David, because a while ago she was telling me, how did David, Ann, get his Ph.D. dissertation?
Well, a long time ago when Dave was at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, he was going across the river to Indiana and taking education courses at IU Extension. He didn't tell you that, did he?
No.
At that time, he felt an urge to teach.
Would you believe I was enrolled at IU one time?
Good heavens!
You followed me around.
I did not go though.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, after we left Southern Seminary, Dave he served for a while in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, as pastor of a very small mission church, and then he went to Panama City, Florida. And while there, he just really felt that his place in the world was teaching. So we went back to school. We had a young child. We went back to school. At FSU, we both went to school, but finally I had to work to help him get through. But he did a master's and a Ph.D. in 2.5 years. Now, that is almost impossible.
Yeah.
But his major professor, Dave's major, was history. And his major professor said, look, if you will write a good paper for every course you take, at the end of your studies, you will have a chapter for your dissertation. So when he finished all of his coursework, he had a paper for each course he had taken, and it all just went together, and all he had to do was write a foreword and a conclusion, and he had his dissertation.
Now,
thus, 2.5 years.
I never heard about that, Ann.
Well, he went to school round the clock, too. He didn't take a break.
I know.
And he also he exempted French and Spanish, so he didn't have to take those two courses. But he's it's just unusual for someone.
And you told me that he was a very smart man.
Oh, he's very bright, yes, indeed. And our grandchildren are all intelligent like their grandfather.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. We threw out the word liberalism a moment ago. Dave, we talk about being liberal. We are I know you're a conservative, like I am, but we're also liberal.
That is right. And I think you can do that in life. You can be liberal at one point and conservative at another, and that don't mean that you're wish-washy like that. But I think, as I said earlier here before we started on this microphone, Thomas Jefferson was a liberal.
Is that right?
Yes, he was a Democratic liberal. But, very conservative when it came to government.
I see.
Very conservative when it came to government. He believed in people rule. He was anti-monarchy. Of course, he wrote the Declaration. And incidentally, it's kind of interesting that we're doing this interview today on 4th of July.
Isn't it? Well, there's another serendipity.
That's amazing. Here we are, 244 years, I believe.
Thereabout, yeah.
I counted that up this morning or last night. Well, we're both conservative and liberal.
That is correct.
Now, the word liberal is not a bad word.
Not a bad word. That is,
Where'd
if you
it come
properly
from?
understand it. If you properly, well, liberal means wide. Liberal arts means wide study. Liberalism means you're willing to hear all sides.
Well, I have a liberal arts degree.
So do I.
So do I.
We have all three of us have a liberal arts degree. Well, we were also talking about realized eschatology.
Yeah.
I bet some of these folks don't know what that is. What's that?
That's a big word, isn't it?
Eschatology.
Eschaton means the end.
The end. And you and I don't, well, I don't view the end of the word. Well, we say in the Apostles, well, somewhere in the Gloria Patri in the Methodist Church,
Yes.
from whence I have come.
Yes.
World without end.
Right.
World without end. Amen. Amen. Now that's twice in the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we can go by that. This world's not going to end.
Well, and eschatology means the end, and realize means with the coming of Christ, that's it.
And that's already happened.
Yes, and there was a very famous scholar in London by the name of C.H. Dodd, and he developed this realized eschatology. And I haven't read his book in a long time, but I was a disciple of his for the longest time.
I read about him too, and that's a part of my pilgrimage. A few years ago, they were talking about the coming of Jesus or Jesus Christ through the eastern sky in 1988.
Yeah.
You might recall that. There was a man who made that doctrine very famous, and he was not a scholar. He was a space. Well, he was a scholar too. He was a space man.
Oh, really?
He was spaced out.
That's funny.
Well, I'm off the wall sometimes and out of the box, but I was hoping he was right. But I got myself ready to go, and
No one should.
And a voice appeared to me and said, if I don't come back on those days, September the 13th, 14th, and 15th, the feast of Rosh Hashanah, you must seek me for a whole new view of eschatology.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to studying, and I found out that I was a C.H. Dodd person. I was a realized eschatology. One more thing I want to say about that. One day here at the barbecue,
Yes?
I was putting on meat on a cold morning on the pit. And by the way, our pigs are spiritual pigs.
All right.
They've been through the fire
All right.
and delivered from the pit.
All right, I follow. Good humor.
Eschatology. I heard this voice inside me. Not only must you seek me for a new view of eschatology, but you've got to seek me for a whole new view of everything.
Okay.
Well, I quit. Well, I didn't quit. I kept on going, and my views have changed. Our time is about up, and we've got to go. And it's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been a pleasure. When I arose this morning from bed, I had no idea on this 4th of July that we would come to this interview. So it's been my pleasure, and I'm sure I'll let Ann speak for herself,
Yes.
too.
Oh, well, it's been wonderful being here. We love Colonel Poole's barbecue, and we love visiting with Colonel Poole.
All right, we've got to go now. Thank you very much, Dr. David Hewitt and Ann Company. Thank you very much for being on WCBA.TV. What the mind can conceive, the heart believe, you can achieve. This is Colonel Oscar Poole speaking. This has been a WCBA.TV production.